Welcome to our podcast series on African scientists at the University of Bern. I am Dr. Jules Korojalo, Head and Coordinator of Initiative Afrique, and Associate Researcher at the Center for the Study of Language and Society. Our guest today is...
I'm Dr. Cornelius Okello. I am a Senior Research Scientist at the Viz Academy for Nature, which is affiliated to the University of Bern. I'm also affiliated to the Institute of Ecology and Evolution.
Thank you, Cornelius. Thank you for giving us some of your valuable time because we know you are very busy. So thank you very much for your interest and for your support.
Thank you for having us.
So how are you?
I'm fine, thank you.
Okay, and how is the weather?
The weather is terrible.
Terrible, what do you mean?
It's raining and it's cold. I mean, it was 17 degrees a few days ago, and now it went to minus and it's snowing and it's raining, so it's just terrible.
Yeah. Where are you from?
I want to believe or call myself a citizen of the world, but I am born and raised in Kenya, Nairobi, Kenya. Studied there from lower primary all the way to university, where I graduated with a degree in environmental science, that is from the Kenyatta University. And then I started traveling the world.
Traveling the world.
Yeah.
So where have you been?
For my master's degree, I was accepted in the Erasmus Mundus program. So I don't know, for those who don't know, it's a program where universities from different European countries form a consortium. So the idea is to study in different universities, to experience Europe. So my first semester was in the UK, in University of Plymouth. And then my second semester, I found myself University of Cadiz, and ended up loving it so much, so I stayed there for my thesis. And then for my PhD, I got again a Erasmus Mundus program again. So I ended up being at the University of Cadiz for the first year, and moving to Italy, to the University of Bologna in Ravenna, where I did my project.
So you started talking a little bit about your itinerary, what you have been doing like since your primary school to now. So, but could you tell us what was for you a kind of milestone?
Milestone, I think for me a milestone was getting accepted in the Erasmus Mundus program. Simply because I grew up reading books and was seeing all this, reading about these wonderful places like the Louvre in Paris and the Colosseum in Rome. And I'd always wanted to travel the world. I never wanted to live outside the Kenya. I was like, I just want to see what these places that they talk about in books look like for myself, and then come back to Kenya. So for my undergrad, I tried getting leaving the country to do it there. So that was going to be my experience abroad. But life happened, so I ended up doing my undergrad back in Kenya. And then when I was now looking for a master's, I said, okay, it's easier to get scholarships out there for a master's than for undergraduate. So getting that scholarship, I think, may have been has had the biggest impact in my life. If you could count a single moment then, because it opened the rest of the world for me.
So, how long have you been in Bern?
I've been in Bern for just under 3 years. In January, it will be celebrating 3 years. I moved here in January 2023.
Since January 2023, you are here in Bern. So, tell me something. How do you feel?
Feel about living in Bern?
Yes.
It's a mixed bag. It's a mixed bag. I grew up in a very busy city, So very big with lots of people. And in Kenya, it was like, well, growing up in Kenya, if all the life was in Nairobi. So if you left Nairobi, you would not have anything. I think most towns didn't have power or water. So I always had a very bad view of smaller towns. But when I left to do my master's and I started living in small towns, the Erasmus program, I'm like, oh, I actually do like small towns. So I like Bern because it's not Zurich or Geneva because it's huge and very busy, but it's nice and quiet. For a person my age, I don't need all the party life, etc. It can get a bit boring at times. And yeah, but I enjoy it.
So far, so what challenges or barriers have you found or have you faced so far here in Bern?
Other than the usual language barriers, which is much better, yeah. I mean, I still haven't gotten around to learning German. Mm-hmm. I mean, I started learning High German until I moved here and found out that they don't speak German here. They actually speak Swiss German, which is another language of its own. I think that kind of demotivated me from learning proper German, so there's a bit of that. But I think, if I remember, maybe the biggest challenge was just settling down here, navigating a new system. I mean, I do have experience with having moved to different countries, but there is a challenge, like which train goes where? What is platform A and platform E? What do this mean, you know?
Yeah, so navigation is a challenge. I would say also language barrier is a very big one. About navigation, I can tell you after nearly 18 years in Bern, I still have the same problem. So,
I imagine.
Okay, very nice. So, but could you highlight some positive aspect of your daily life? Like what is striking for you in your daily life?
Positives about the daily life in Bern.
Yeah.
One thing that jumps to mind is how distinct the seasons are. I mean, coming from the equator, we don't have such distinct seasons. Having lived in other European countries where there are seasons, they are, but I think in Bern it's so distinct, like the color changes are very, 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 very distinct. I also do think that I find it very convenient. In as much as we are here discussing inconveniences of bus stops, the fact that you can actually have connecting, like one of the biggest things that I keep thinking about is that I don't need to drive here. I don't absolutely need to drive. All I need to do is just get a Libero, and I'll be able to move around. I can be in Geneva in 2 hours, so it's quite convenient for me, I think. So daily, that's amazing and very appreciated maybe for the Swiss people, but we keep having this thing with my Kenyan friends, some who live here, some who visited, is that you can actually plan your day considering the public transport. If I say I'm going to meet you at 2, I can actually be here at 2 because I know the bus runs at this time and I'll be here at this time. Again, very underrated coming from where some of us came, where the time management is just it's you take what you get.
Yes, amazing time management.
Yes,
this is really what is happening in Bern. Let's come back to the topic why we are here to talk about your academic career, to talk about the University of Bern, to talk about science, and also to talk about you. And what do you think? What is your role as an African scientist, if you may accept to be called as such? Because you're saying you would rather be a world citizen.
Oh, that's a very complicated question. Complicated because I feel like if I answer as an African, I feel like I'm carrying the weight of the continent, and I've barely traveled across the continent. But I don't know whether it's fortunate or unfortunate, but I think my role, your role, our roles as scientists who are living in the global north is a representation of where we come from. That can be a positive or a negative. However, and I've had these conversations many a times with my supervisor, Margaret, and we look at us as our roles as providing platforms that were not available for people back home to be the best they can be. Because we come from places where there's incredible potential in terms of science, in terms of researchers. It's just opportunity. Opportunity could be financial or etc. So if we're able to build that capacity back there, by whatever means we can, then we want to play that part as best as possible.
This is very, very nice, and I think this is also one of the key messages that Initiative Afrique is advocating for. And in such a context, how would you actively promote exchanges between the University of Bern and partners from the African continent?
That's a very good question. What I am actively participating in is how we work. Is the way the Visa Academy is set up, for example, is it's got regional hubs. One in East Africa, one in Peru. East Africa basically is in Kenya, in Peru, in Laos, and Madagascar, and of course an office here. And it's done intentionally so that we can work with people in those areas. So how we promote it is, for example, my project specifically, my role at the Visa Academy is to support these different hubs. However, charity begins at home. So when I got here, my first job, my first objective was to create projects in an area that I understand. So that is Kenya. So my projects are based in Kenya, and now I've been there for 3 years and tried them out and seen. So now it's time to expand to the other hubs. But the role that we played, or basically what I did, was just focusing on working on projects in Kenya and not just working on them by myself, because I'm not in Kenya majority of the time. So how do I partner with people who are working back there? So in this sense, then you're killing two birds with one stone. I'm working with on projects where I'm benefiting from the projects, at the same time building capacity for people who are on the ground, building capacity for the scientists, the amazing talent we have there. So I think then I do see that how the University of Bern can actively take part in such collaboration is getting into partnerships with African scientists, not as superiors, but working together. So, because the people back there don't understand the context. For example, we have a project in Laikipia, which is in the northern part of Kenya, let's call it that, and it's an area I have not lived in. So I cannot claim to have, I may have better knowledge of it than you do because I'm a Kenyan, but I don't have in-depth knowledge of it as compared to a person who's come from there. So working there, the first thing was to establish relationships with the people there and create a network. We call it a community of practice, where we are working on this together and learning from each other. So the advantages would have coming from this side of the world is maybe resources, right? Or access to resources, being able to apply for grants, while they have their expertise and the knowledge of the area, and therefore form a partnership.
So you've been talking about partnership, about networks. So are you part of specific African networks that can help in such process?
Does Initiative Afrique count?
Yeah.
Yes. I do. I'm just joining up with Initiative Afrique, so I wouldn't claim that I'm really in it. But right now, I would say other than Initiative Afrique, no. I think I've been going about it as a lone wolf, or going about it within my circle of influence. But yeah, when I found out about Initiative Afrique, that's when I joined. I was like, okay, there's only so much I can do by myself, or there's only so far my influence can reach. But if I'm able to join up with people who are similar mindset, similar goals, then we can do much more.
Very nice. This is just for tonight. That's why we are calling our people, join us, come and make our community stronger for the partnership between the University of Bern and the African continent. So be open for other opportunities in this context. Out of this partnership, you were talking about communities of practice. So can you explain a little bit what does it mean when you say communities of practice?
Nobody's ever asked me to explain this. Let me see if I can explain it. So communities of practice, I'll use an example to explain it. I work in nature-based solutions for water resource management and biodiversity conservation. Nature-based solutions is not, it might be a new term, quote unquote, because IUCN mainstreamed it around 2020. But if you look at the definition of community of nature-based solutions, it's been practiced in Africa for decades, because it's basically not conserving an ecosystem for the sake of it, but considering the impacts on humans. And the way projects have been designed in Kenya for the longest time is it's always been, how are we helping a community? And one of the things I did in my project was, before start coming with my new ideas as a scientist working in Switzerland, I have to put this in quotes, was to understand what's going on in the landscape. And I had a workshop where we invited people we know based on our networks, and we formed a group where we now discuss, first of all, identified what projects are underway or have been done in the past that deal with nature-based solutions. And then from this platform, people now have conversations. What are you doing? What worked for you? What didn't work for you? How can I improve what I'm doing? So it basically becomes a collective of people to exchange ideas on this particular subject. And that way we can grow. That way we can build a network around similar interests and the similar work that we are doing. So now we have got a WhatsApp group, and we've got an email chat. Just about to produce the map that shows where all these projects are. And I think since I had a workshop with them, the first workshop was last year in April, and we had a few follow-up workshops. I've heard of several project partnerships that have been formed from this group. So I think it's working. Even some of the scientists that I've worked with in Kenya, and this is not necessarily a global north versus global south issue, there's also a level of classism with scientists. When we go to work with local communities, we think that we are the knowledge keepers. I remember an incident where we were in a workshop in Lamu, in the Kenyan coast, and we were busy talking about all these mangrove conservation techniques, and one of the local elders stood up and said, whatever it is you're teaching us or you're trying to tell us were taught to us by our grandfathers. We know how to conserve our mangroves. There's nothing new you're teaching us. And that was it moved what I knew about indigenous knowledge from being academic to being real. Because when you do your environmental science, you always thought about how to value indigenous knowledge, but meeting somebody who's telling you, yeah, there's nothing you're teaching me, makes you realize even you with your PhD can have still a lot to learn. And I think that's where the valuation of indigenous knowledge comes. Understanding that you may have fancy technology, but you don't have all the answers. You may have all this knowledge you've accrued over the years, but you still don't know everything. And as I mentioned earlier, as a Kenyan working in a landscape that I've not worked before, there was a recognition that I don't know this landscape. I don't know this, and I had to depend on people who have grown up there, who've lived there, who've been part of the landscape for the longest time. And that's when indigenous knowledge does have a major role. There should be a recognition of indigenous knowledge, and not just as an addition, but as a core knowledge system.
My dear colleague, my dear friend, I wish you a nice day and a somehow warmer day.
Thank you very much for having me. It was a pleasure talking about myself.